This is MIT. Who's heard of MIT? All right. 4,000 undergrads, 7,000 grad students, 1,500 postdocs, 1,100 faculty, and 180,000 alumni. They're doing extraordinary things. Now, MIT came from very humble beginnings, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. All those MIT folks, even the 103 Nobel laureates, probably don't know what I'm about to tell you, but I think it can help inform the vector of life that you're on. So this is William Barton Rogers. He went to William and Mary. He did not graduate. He was a geologist, and he was teaching at UVA. And while he was teaching at UVA, he had a side hustle. He was surveying the state of Virginia. And this was so long ago, it was before West Virginia had broken off. And he was really frustrated. He was banging his head against the wall because he couldn't hire skilled surveyors, there's a sextant, to help him. So he started, and why would he be asked to survey the state? It's because this was the Industrial Revolution, and people were building train tracks to connect the country. They were building factories. This is actually the factory that today I work in. And 100 years ago, 9% of the rubber was refined in the United States in this factory. They invented the woven hose before rubber hoses would bulge, and they put a woven material around it, and they cornered the market. The bicycle tire came out of here, galoshes, raincoats, rubber in jars. And that factory also created train tracks, and they dug a canal a mile from the Charles River to it just to move the product. So the Industrial Revolution was happening in America, and William Barton Rogers was frustrated that in Virginia, he didn't have skilled people to help keep up. So this is the hose I just referenced, the bicycle tire. This is an entrepreneur, maybe Greg, in a past life experimenting. So William started writing his brother. And this is the actual letter. I'm holding that letter that he said to his brother, we need to build an institute that can respond to this moment. Who thinks we're in a moment right now? Okay? He said, we need to build an institute to respond to that moment. And this is William Barton Rogers. And this is the pamphlet that he wrote. The week before the U.S. Civil War, he started MIT. And look at this sentence. The countless connecting threads. Anyone realize why that's an interesting word today? Woven into one indissoluble texture form that every enlarging web, which is the blended product of the world's scientific and industrial activity, William Barton Rogers. Now, he looked at what Harvard was doing in Boston and said they were teaching engineering and sciences too theoretically. And he said, let's create an institute. And he came to Boston because all sorts of exciting things were happening there. And he said, that's where I got to do it. Never had been there. And he said, this institute needs to work with industry and get hands-on experience. And that wasn't something that was common. This was the first school to use the word technology in it. It's one of the land-grant schools. I know there's one up the street from here. And when he showed up in Boston, something extraordinary had happened, and this is partly why he came. For a whole decade, 6 days a week, 24/7, gondolas would move dirt 16 miles away to fill in the Back Bay. And they doubled the size of downtown Boston. They added 70 acres. And in that new acreage, they put this building. And the legislature and the governor said, let's put something really special here. And William raised his hand and said, I got it, MIT. And so that building is where MIT started. And the first 6 classes were these. If you meet an MIT student, you ask them what course you are, they'll tell you course 1, course 2. Actually, course 2 today is mechanical engineering. It flipped. But these were responding to the moment. And here are some of the early MIT students. A lot of them wore bowler hats, I guess. Working with industry, hands-on learning. It was co-ed. And one guy wasn't a student, but it was open source. He could hang out there. And he was born in Scotland, was living in Nova Scotia. His mom was deaf. He would put his lips to his mom's forehead and vibrate messages. He was teaching the deaf in Boston, and he was hanging out at MIT, and he was teaching, and one of his students was deaf. He was teaching her, and he decided he wanted to propose to her, and he said to her dad, hey, can I get married? And he said, not until you make something yourself. So he spent time at MIT with MIT students and created the patent for the telephone, and without the telephone, you don't get mobile, you don't get the internet, you don't get AI. So this is a pretty important invention. But he wasn't even an MIT student, but the community was welcoming. As I mentioned, the courses, these were, they expanded over the years, but all preparing people for the moment. So downtown Boston, where MIT started, was bustling. All these people were coming and going. It was noisy, it was dusty, and it was outgrowing its space. So it said, where should we go? And some alumni of MIT didn't have money, but they had moved to Chicago, and they said, hey, come to Chicago. Wouldn't that be funny? Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Chicago. So it didn't go there. But there was one founding chemistry professor, this is Charles Eliot. He had written about learning by doing, hands-on learning, and Harvard hired him, and for 44 years, he was the longest-serving president of Harvard. And his obsession was to annex MIT. And he even got this guy, Andrew Carnegie, to buy a golf course right next to Harvard where he had planned to put MIT. On 4 different occasions, he got denied. Today, that's where Harvard Business School is. So MIT was supposed to be there, but it didn't work out. MIT decided to go across the Charles River. See, there's the back bay that was filled in, and one of the alum helped buy 40 acres, and they put in 20,000 pylons, and they built a new campus. And they started drawing it, and said, let's build multiple buildings. Ended up being 22 buildings, this iconic building, with all the different disciplines in the same space. And they wrote the names of the disciplines diagonally because they didn't want to say where they began and where they ended, and they could be flexible. And there was a ton of bumping and connecting. There were a lot of technical schools at this time, but this was very novel and helped facilitate innovation. And then they went to the Bill Gates of the time, one of the wealthiest people who had never been to MIT, but had hired a lot of people from MIT, and said, hey, will you help fund this 22 buildings? And he gave $2.5 million and said, here. And that was George Eastman of Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York. And that's the check. So the building got built, and it was one of the first to use concrete in a very innovative way. And this is called the Infinite Corridor. I've been to India 12 times, and a lot of the universities have infinity corridors. They're trying to replicate this. But this corridor was key to facilitating connectivity. And when they opened the school, they made a big deal about it. They had floodlights, and they said, this is America's institute. The alumni all piled into Symphony Hall, all 1,500, and then they got alumni groups from around the world to get on a telephone call. It was the first Zoom call before Zoom. And you see Duluth is represented. North and South Dakota didn't make it, so we got to talk to them. So this is the new campus, the new building that was responding to the moment. You see some of the hands-on learning things they were doing. And then they were debating, we need a mascot, and the bison was already taken. So they said, how about the elephant? Or how about the kangaroo? And that almost got it, but then they said, oh, they're not indigenous to the country. So they went with the beaver, a great engineer. That's the brass rat. A lot of MIT students wear those. Also, radar was invented at MIT around World War II. Without radar, you don't get GPS, and you don't get geolocation on your phone, whether you want it or not. And this is Project Whirlwind. Everyone's so proud of Silicon Valley. Before Silicon Valley, Detroit was Silicon Valley. Before Detroit, St. Louis was Silicon Valley. And before Silicon Valley, 128 in Boston was Silicon Valley. And this Project Whirlwind, a lot of the technology got exported to create the personal computer. And one of the guys that worked on it is this guy, Charles Draper. And if you look in this picture, you can see something very interesting. Does anyone know who Stan Lee is? So he created Iron Man, and he was searching for his alter ego, and he decided to name him after this guy. This is Charles Draper, Charles Stark Draper. So this is the inspiration for Tony Stark, and he created the guidance system so we could land on the moon. He didn't want us to miss the moon. This is Minsky. Minsky in 1955 wrote a paper to the government saying, I want to get a bunch of people to think about cybernetics and think about the future. And he wrote in that for the first time AI. He's the one who coined the word AI, MIT guy. And she runs that lab, Daniela Roos, actually from Iowa, not contiguous, but one state over. And she runs an 1,800-person lab at MIT. And MIT did the Human Genome Project. 2001, February, they deciphered it. A lot of great things have happened there. And 10 to the negative ninth, these guys are making chips and thinking about sustainability and energy. It has a lot of implications for agriculture and food and so on. So I'm winding down my talk. This is a bridge that I take every day to get to MIT, where I'm a fellow and I lecture and I run TEDxMIT. Every day I go across this bridge. Would you know that this bridge in 1793 was controversial? They call it the Salt and Pepper Bridge because it looks like salt and pepper. This is why it was controversial. Now, if you read this, you might find this funny. The leadership, the brain trust of Harvard said we can't be corrupting our students by connecting people. Well, the idea behind the MIT main building was connecting people and bridging. And I don't know how many of you know, but this coming July, the United States is going to celebrate 250 years. Other little-known fact that I know very well, because I've watched every Star Trek, is Captain Kirk flew the Starship Enterprise 250 years exactly in the future. He's from Iowa, not contiguous, but around this area. As we think about the future, as we think about who we are and where we want to go, I think understanding the humble beginnings of MIT and what it's created, we need to be doing some bold things now, reacting to the moment, thinking about how we can make bridges. And yesterday I spoke at Elevate, which was just insane. And I'm so proud of what Greg has built here. His mom, Kathy, where are you? Thank you for bringing him. This is Greg. 13 years ago, he applied to be part of some program I was running, and he came and just was awesome, and I collect interesting people. I haven't let go of him. This is a modern-day William Barton Rogers. So what I want to say lastly is we're in the geographic center of North America. What better place to send a message that these are different times, and we got to build some bridges, and let's go. Thank you very much.